Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Founder-Led Sales Podcast with myself, Richard Walton, and my brother, Henry Walton. Welcome. This is the podcast that delves into the unique journey of founders who lead their company sales efforts and are now looking to step back from the day-to-day sales process or have already done so. Some of them also are very happy where they are, which is what we had with our last guest, Will Pearson. In each episode, we explore the challenges and strategies of running the sales team as a founder. And we get top tips from people who've been there and done that and what it means to be a successful founder leading a sales team or for those who have exited the sales process. So our guest today is... I've been practicing his surname before we started recording, and now I'm having a bit of stage fright. So, Doug, welcome. Can you pronounce your surname for me, please?
It's Strycharczyk.
Strycharczyk. Doug, welcome. Doug is a prominent figure in the field of psychology and leadership development, best known for his work on mental toughness. He is the CEO of AQR International, a company specializing in developing and applying mental toughness assessments and programs in various sectors, including business, education, health, social mobility, and sports. Doug is closely associated with the research and development of the Mental Toughness Model and the Mental Toughness Questionnaire, MTQ, a psychometric tool designed to measure mental toughness. He works often in collaboration with Professors Peter Clough and John Perry, and has been influential in advancing the understanding of mental toughness and its application in improving performance, well-being, agility, and leadership effectiveness. I cannot personally think of anything more important in founder-led sales than mental toughness. So really looking forward to digging into this. Doug, welcome. Good to have you here. Henry, over to you.
Welcome, Doug. So glad we got through the technical issues. So great to be talking to you. Doug, I think maybe it'd be good to start off with, can you paint the picture a little bit about, what's happening in AQR, what's happening in sales, your role in it, just to help us understand the kind of current lay of the land?
Of course, and thank you both for inviting me to be a guest on your podcast. So you've covered a little bit of the background to me and my business. And the business started 36 years ago. Our work with the mental toughness concept started about just over 20 years ago. And what we've been doing is we've been bringing a brand new idea, and this is the big challenge for us, into a world that already thinks it knows a lot about people development. So that's been one of the big challenges. The other thing is it's a concept that is challenging a lot of what people already know. In fact, it's challenging a lot of myths and facts, which adds another dimension to the challenge of making progress in a pretty challenging world. So our markets are mainly two markets. One is practitioners, that's coaches, trainers, consultants. These are people who go into organizations, try to help them change. The other market is big organizations. They tend to be big enough to want to bring the idea in themselves and sort of develop it or work with us and roll it out within their organization. They won't tend to use outside consultants so much. To give you a kind of benchmark, in 2002, we were able to put our hands up and say the mental toughness concept and the mental toughness questionnaire works. And that is really important. Because in that world that we inhabit of people development, 95% of things that people do have no real evidence behind them. We are very evidence focused. And so we started in 2002, and I have to say the first 4 or 5 years were a hard slog, partly because of the term mental toughness, and people didn't like it. They didn't like the sound of toughness, but it's the correct term for what we've got, and we capitalized on its uniqueness. The fact that it was something that jarred with people enabled us to start a conversation with people. I would say till 2008, we were struggling. It was a real challenge to get attention of people. And then not many people will say this. When the financial crisis came, that was one of the best things that happened to us, because people started to have to look around and look for new solutions. What they'd used before hadn't worked. And so, to cut a long story short, if I run all the way to the present time, we now work in around 80 countries around the world. In 2008, we worked in 2. So it's a concept and a set of products and a set of materials that people are beginning to wake up to, and we're beginning to get somewhere with it. And it's also attracting a lot of attention that we don't necessarily always want. But that's the story. So right now we are, I would say, tootling along really comfortably.
And so within that story, you were predominantly the sole person that was selling the concept or selling the product.
Yeah, so that was my role, my main role, and I had and still have a very good team behind me. So most of my time was going out speaking at hundreds of conferences, presentations. Anybody who would have me, I would go and speak. And that was a very effective way of operating until COVID. COVID changed all of that.
I'm sure, obviously, your understanding of the product has changed a lot in that time, but the concept and the kind of the ethos behind it, has that really changed, or is the pitch in its fundamentals, really been the same, and it's more that the market has shifted and some other factors that have come around to your way of thinking? Like, how much has it changed in that time?
Henry, that's one of the best questions I've ever been asked. It's changed a lot. When we first started, because mental toughness was rooted in the world of sport, and that did attract a bit of attention. Most people thought, you've got to be more mentally tough to succeed. Mental toughness is all about success. In fact, what we now understand really well is that mental toughness is a spectrum. You've got mental toughness at one end and mental sensitivity at the other. It is perfectly possible to be mentally tough and fail. It's perfectly possible to be mentally sensitive and succeed. And that's one of the things that is kind of beginning to shake up the industry, because the industry is rooted in the idea of you're strong or you're weak, you're good or bad. Everything is polarized. And what we're saying is, no, it isn't. You are who you are. The trick is to optimize who you are. And every one of us can bring a different perspective to the same situation. We can all succeed, but in different ways. And that's the kind of thinking that we now sit with now. And surprisingly, it goes really well with senior leadership teams.
Oh. And I mean, I'd love to know in what way, and especially in relating to sales, but I guess I'm going to shine the light on you a little bit. Have you used this to kind of perfect how you sell, pitch the product, or your role within sales, and how have you done that? And I'd be interested about how your approach has kind of changed in that period.
Well, I can link it back to sales because, funnily enough, I would say in the post-COVID era, the sales, the whole area of sales has probably been one of our biggest growth areas, because the nature of sales is changing, and people are beginning to understand there's something unique about sales. And before I started the business, I worked for a fantastic company called Castrol, the lubricants company. And if they were really good at one thing, it was sales and marketing. I worked on the operations side, and our job was to deliver product. And if we got one order wrong out of 1,000, we'd beat ourselves up. Then I started working more closely with the salespeople. And they'd go out and do 10 appointments, or maybe 20 appointments in a week. If they succeeded with 3 or 4 and failed with 16 or 17, they'd celebrate. And, suddenly I began to realize just how tough a gig sales and marketing is. And of course, I carried that through to what I did. I knew it was my job, my responsibility to deal with sales. So I always had to go out and I would have to take the knocks and to some extent protect the rest of the people in the business from that. So that's one of the things I learned, and through which I was able to hone my sales skills. I become self-aware about my mental toughness profile, where I had advantages and where are disadvantages. And I use that to help build the sales of the business and build a business. I would say the one thing that I've learned is the importance of relationships in sales. It is so fundamentally important. We have clients that have been with us. So I started 36 years ago. They're still with us because of the relationship. And every time we get a new client on board, they always come on board because they learn to trust us. But we don't lose many clients. And it's one of the platforms for our growth. So it's not just that we keep clients. And, building relationships is a part of mental toughness. There's one component in the mental toughness spectrum, which is called interpersonal confidence. And that's about being prepared to just go out and connect with people and not worry about it. So that's even asking people stupid questions, things like that. Yeah. So that's something I really learned.
Doug, do you know that at Harvard now, they actually have a course for young people on how to speak to other young people?
Yeah.
Because so much of their communication is done online and virtually. And it worries me about the future of some sales leaders, because they're losing that, as you've just said. What's so critical is the ability to go up to strangers, start conversations, ask questions, be pushed back. And that is a skill that I think we've all developed over a period of time, but it's severely lacking. Doug, just very quickly, I wanted to quickly just zoom back a little bit. Sorry to jump in, but you mentioned something, and I don't want to lose it. You mentioned that when you started out, you did a lot of conferences. And you did a lot of talking at conferences. Why did you choose that as your sales strategy?
Because I realized the core product that we deal with, the mental toughness concept, is a complex product. So it's not suited to creating a leaflet that you can send out, or it's not even suited to a standard at an exhibition, because there's a degree of complexity. You've got to have enough time to explain it. So you probably need at least 15, 20 minutes to get people, because people aren't familiar with it. And the one opportunity where you get that is at a conference, or more likely in a webinar.
Yeah. Okay.
And and it worked. My very, very first success, and literally within weeks of starting, is I got invited to speak at a conference with 140 chief executives in the audience, and I walked out with 6 clients.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting, because when we think about profiling of salespeople, I mean, the classic thing, right, is you only have to watch Wolf of Wall Street or ask most people what they think about sales. And it's like the kind of dodgy car salesman. And there's always an element, and I can see why you struggle with mental toughness, because there's a little bit like, you don't take no for an answer, you drive the hardest deal. Like there's always that element of sales, right? And I think that's where a lot of people that we see kind of struggle with it, about what type of sales person they can be and how they use their skills, how they can use their strengths and their weaknesses to not potentially be like that type of profile, but more build the relationship part, which we were just talking about. I mean, did that always come naturally to you at conferences? Did you enjoy it? Was it something that you had to learn? And I guess right now as well, I mean, how are you? What are the issues that you're facing at the moment? Is it capacity? Is it enjoyment? Is it skill set?
Right. So there's about 6 questions in there.
Yes. So I guess start with the first one. I mean, how did you view it at the beginning and your comfort level with conferences? Did you find that a challenge?
Well, throughout my life and my career, I've loved challenge, and challenge is one of the components of the mental toughness concept. And challenge is where risk orientation sits. So if you look ahead, this year, next year, 5 years ahead, it's fuzzy. You can't actually see very clearly what lies ahead. But what you do know is that it's going to be full of opportunity. That's one thing I've always understood. We're never short of opportunity. But you also know there are going to be lots of things that trip you up and set you back. Now, some people, in terms of their mental approach, will look at that and say, yeah, life's going to be a bit tough, but actually there's some going to be good times. I'm going to go for the opportunities. Other people will say, oh, I know there's opportunities out there, but I'm going to get bruised. I'd rather not get bruised. And I see that as fundamentally important in sales. You know, as I said earlier, you have to learn how to deal with rejection in sales. And as members, I often describe salespeople as the athletes of the business world. Because if you look at athletes and sports people, they lose. Quite often they lose, even if they're the best. And they've got to learn how to deal with it. If you don't deal with it, then you stop being successful. In sales, that's critically important. The mental toughness concept, when we try to explain it simply to people, it's really a combination of two things. One is resilience, and the other one is optimism. Now, the resilience thing helps you to deal with the setbacks. And resilience is really good. People often confuse what we do with resilience. Resilience is very useful, but it's not enough. If you rely upon resilience alone, you eventually get worn out. What you do need is this other component, this optimism, this ability to say, okay, I've had a lousy day, lousy week, lousy month, but I still know I can make it. And if you bring those two together, which is what the mental toughness concept does, then people can thrive. In a lot of early sales teams that I used to work in, we used to see a lot of turnover of salespeople. Salespeople would get burnt out. Would be charging after those targets, but they would be relying entirely on resilience. And sales leaders, the sales team leaders, would be trying to motivate through numbers, give you a bonus if you sell another 2 widgets or whatever. That's not enough. That's not what motivates people in the long run. And what motivates people in the long run is their intrinsic motivation. It's a bit like, really, the answer to your question. I like sales. I love sales. And there are people who look down on salespeople and they think, well, that's a pretty funny occupation. But I love sales because I love the challenge of sales. So if people come into the world of sales, they're really coming into it because they like those sort of challenges. And that's what leaders should nurture. And that's where I think things like giving people targets, okay, that can be useful, but if you're not careful, that can demotivate as quickly as it will motivate.
Doug, I imagine, though, you say that you love sales, but I imagine that you love sales because you truly and utterly believe in your product and the difference and the impact that it makes. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny, I had lunch today with someone an old salesperson of mine that used to work for me. And I checked in with her to see how she was doing. And she's moved around a couple of times, but she's an excellent salesperson, but she's really thriving because she truly and utterly believes in the product. And even though she's quite a stereotypical salesperson, she's motivated, by the win and the game of sales, and she likes to make money and all of those things. She admitted that she performs just so much better when she loves her product or our service. And I mention it because I think I think one of the key jobs of any leader in their company is to make sure that the other salespeople really, really believe and love and are passionate as they are about their product or service, and that they're constantly selling the impact that it makes. It's critically important. Are you the only salesperson in your company, or do you have a team of people working with you?
Well, no, I'm the main salesperson, but our business model is we call it a partnership model. We connect with similar organizations all over the world, and they sell into their territories. So I tend to sell to big international organizations and to the partners. They do the local selling. So in one sense, there's only me or a couple of us. In another sense, we've got hundreds of them all over the world.
And you're continually selling to them. And then do you find you have to motivate them regularly to have that perseverance?
Yes. The answer to that is yes. And it's not just about the integrity of the product. There's lots of products that I can look around, even in this room, and say, that is a product I admire, but I wouldn't want to sell it. It's the
Yeah.
purpose. It's what you do with the products. And
Yeah.
for me, people forget about purpose. If you're doing something for a really good reason, it excites you. And purpose, I think, I think probably the heart of what your lunchtime friend was talking about. This is the reason I'm selling, because I know either I solve a problem. I used to get a lot of buzz when I was a consultant, and clients would come to me with a headache, and I would help them find a solution. You'd walk away, you'd feel great with that. And that's what gives you the buzz, not the fact that you spent 2 or 3 days in a room with them doing a presentation or running a workshop. But you got to them to the point where they'd found their solution, and you could see the worry lifting from them. That's what gives me a buzz.
So, Doug, out of interest, I mean, you've been in this seat as the kind of sole salesperson for quite a while, and it sounds like you get a lot of enjoyment out of it, which is great. I would imagine there's also some challenges. Can you speak to those a little bit? Like, how do you see the challenges, or which ones do you face at the moment?
Well, one obvious challenge is I have to give my age away. I'm 75, so transition becomes an issue. I can keep going for a while longer. The other is, I suppose, technology is making a difference. So at one time, I would probably do in the UK 40,000 miles a year in my car. I checked my mileage last year. It was 4,000 miles.
Wow.
More of my time behind the screen. So adjusting to that's a big challenge. And then the other big challenge is you spoke about the podcast is about people who are exiting in some way. Well, I want to exit in a strange way. I want to leave the company behind me. And I want others to come along and pick up the baton. And that's my challenge, to either find individuals or a small group of individuals. And they are there to be able to work together cohesively and keep the business going. Because there's an aspect of our business. We do a lot of work in business, and that's where probably the most profitable bit. But we also do a lot of work in sport, a lot of work in health now, and especially working around well-being, and a lot in social mobility. And each one of those brings its own bit of buzz.
And I don't know where you are in this process. I mean, have you started thinking about the profile of those types of people? And could you speak to us a little bit about the route you think you might take? Because obviously in this situation, there's always a few different ways that you could go, right?
So the first thing that I did is got all the people who know me well in the business, including our academic colleagues, to take me apart and say, well, what is it that I bring to the business? And they had identified 4 or 5 distinct things that I bring that need to be replaced. And then we looked at how these would be replaced. And we think we've got a way forward. It doesn't mean that I would be replaced with one person. It doesn't mean I'm totally unique, but we can replace what I bring to the business in different ways. And the business has got to operate in a different way. I'm kind of the founder, very much the thought leader. We've got to make it more a broader business and a more engaging business.
I think it's quite common. We talk to a lot of founders who are involved in the sales process, not necessarily looking to exit their business, but they're certainly looking to exit the sales side of things for various reasons. And quite often they think that they need a salesperson when actually they probably need 2 to 3 different types of people, because it's it is actually quite rare to find someone that can do all of the things that a founder can do. And I like that you've got the company to break you apart into pieces. It's a good way to look at it. I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of scrutiny yet, but perhaps in the future. Doug, we're coming up to our rapid question session at the end. Before I move across, Henry, any final main questions for Doug from you?
No, let's go into rapid fire.
Okay,
right.
Doug. So I'm just going to ask you a series of questions. We're not going to follow up with answers. We're just going to work through them. You ready?
Mhm.
Pitch your business in 30 seconds.
Right. We're a business that will help individuals and the organization develop. Oh, no, right. Okay. We'll help you to be the best version of you that you can be. We'll help you to thrive in a very competitive world.
Awesome. The first sale you ever made.
Right. So I described that earlier. That was as a result of a presentation to a large group of people, and it was to work with a listed company in the UK that was going down the tubes, and we were able to turn it around in 2 years. Yeah.
What do you love about sales? We've kind of
I love the challenge of sales. I love the ability to bring a solution to somebody else's problems.
What don't you like about sales?
I suppose it's, although I'm used to it, it's the rejection rate and the odd reasons for rejection.
That's classic. Your top sales tip.
Build relationships. It's all about relationships. It isn't about what you can give to your client. It's what you can do with your client.
When recruiting a salesperson, or perhaps in your case, a partner, what do you look for in them?
I look for their intrinsic motivation, and that consists of 4 elements. We mentioned them briefly. One is purpose. Why do they want to do it? Secondly, autonomy. Are they prepared to work with the minimum of supervision? I don't particularly want to stand over somebody's shoulders. Thirdly, do they really believe they can do it? So have they got mastery of their skills? And finally, are they into belongingness? Are they into being prepared to work with a group of people? Because there's nothing on this planet that you can do on your own. You always need other people.
Thank you. What do you dislike about other salespeople?
I suppose it's some will relentlessly hound you. And I'm actually the victim of one such right now. Not you, but
Yeah.
yeah. Some
I
people
guess,
try to tell you all sorts of rubbish.
and I guess following up from that, how do you keep in contact and build relationships with prospects without hounding them?
Well, by sharing information with them. Very often it's, when you start a relationship, there has to be a reason for the relationship. If they're not interested in a relationship with you, or maybe they're mildly curious, that's going to be quite difficult. But most people have some sort of issue that they would like either to talk about or find a solution for. So the quicker that you can find those hooks that help the other person and make that other person confident that you have something to offer them, the quicker you'll build that relationship. And I will very often research a client to see if I can identify the hooks. So for that, LinkedIn is great. But I also look at the organization they work for and try to get a feel for what the challenges are. You find out about that. So doing that kind of research to find out what might interest the client and then exploring that with the client, I think that matters.
Yeah. Doug, thank you so much for being on the show. Great chatting to you. It's been really great to understand a little bit more about what you do. Personally, I feel that kind of mental toughness is absolutely critical for sales, but it's going to become more and more important in the workplace in this kind of new world that we're living in. So thanks a lot for having us.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you both. Thank you both.
Great to chat. Nice to see you again.